The International Naturist Federation defines Naturism as a way of life in harmony with nature, characterized by the practice of communal nudity with the intention of encouraging self-respect, respect for others, and for the environment. The Naturist Society defines Naturism as the practice of going nude, especially in a mixed social setting. Fair Oaks Family Naturist Park defines Naturism as the practice of complete nudity in a social setting. Fair Oaks also includes the INF definition. I include Fair Oaks because of Stefan's great influence on the naturist community via his Naturist Living Show podcast. This would be like trying to define Star Wars and leaving Mark Hamill's definition out of the picture. At least to me. I personally distinguish between nudism and naturism. I define nudism as the practice of being nude during ordinary life activities, especially in social settings. I define naturism as the practice of nudity in the pursuit of greater harmony with nature, especially in social settings. I also add aramism, the term that I myself coined as far as I know, which is the practice of going nude as much as is prudent and compassionate, out of a conviction that clothing is useful as protective gear, but is otherwise detrimental to human health and well-being. The most basic reason is that it feels good, and there's no reason to wear uncomfortable clothes when they're not needed for protection, whether mine or someone else's. But there are also great health benefits like improved circulation, increased brain stimulation, generation of electric current, the influx of natural electrons from the earth into bare feet, vitamin D and serotonin from sun exposure. And then there are the psychological and social benefits, like improved body image and self-acceptance, and the joy of being in harmony with others and nature. But there's also just something about socializing nude. There's not really a way to explain it in English. It's just different, in a good way. People talk to you differently when everyone's naked, and it's a great way to have conversations. No, nudism is just the human body without coverings. Human cultures have a long history of nakedness before the modern nudist movement, without a necessary link to sexuality. Communities large and small, from villages all the way up to far-reaching civilized empires, have often tolerated full, co-ed, public nudity, without the public devolving into some kind of sexual spectacle. Examples include civilized peoples from Europe, Africa, the Middle East, and Asia, including Japan, as well as indigenous peoples from all the same, and from North and South America, Australia, and the island peoples of the Pacific. I could go on. Social nudity is not a fad, and it is not fringe. It is an integral part of human history, and it is at least as old as the human species itself. That being said, there have always been those who sexualize the body per se. That does not mean that the body is about sex, just that these particular people have a particular mindset. One has only to visit a family naturist resort to understand that nudism is not about sex. Naturists of all ages can occupy the same spaces and do very normal things. Everyone from retired men and women to career-age people to teens or children or infants. Everyone. There are those who insist that nudism is inescapably and overpoweringly sexual. But in my experience, these people have always had little to no study on the matter, and zero experience behind this insistence. Rather, these people tend to make dogmatic statements from the outside, based on a position of relative ignorance, and an honest conviction that false things are true. The short answer, yes. Recently, the Naturist Living Show podcast released a 2-part series answering this question. Links in the description. Stefan also did an episode years ago interviewing the author of a book called Growing Up Without Shame, which studies nudism's impact on children from a psychological perspective. I recommend all 3 episodes because it's clear from the data and from the experience of naturists all around the world, and the cultures previously mentioned, that the sight of the human body is not harmful to children. Isn't it obvious in hindsight, though, that the sight of a human being shouldn't be traumatic to humans? Are we scarred for life when we see the faces, ears, or even the tongues and teeth of other humans? No. Hands? No. Feet? Navels? Shoulders? Ears? Nostrils? What makes butts and nipples so scary? Everyone has those. The surface features of males' and females' buttocks and nipples are all the same. What differentiates nipples is size, and size varies among men as well as women. And the tissues that are under the skin are the only other distinguishing factor. So it's unclear why one nipple is extremely dangerous and a threat to public well-being, and the other is not. And do we really believe that human beings are physically, neurologically, and psychologically so ill-equipped to bear the sight of human bodies, specifically human genitals, without suffering irreparable harm? Dogs don't suffer harm from seeing dogs' genitals. Apes don't suffer harm from seeing apes' genitals. Humans don't suffer harm from seeing animal genitals. Doctors don't suffer harm from seeing their patients' genitals. Parents don't suffer harm from seeing their children's genitals. Humans don't suffer harm from seeing their own genitals. And when human history, modern research, and abundant anecdotes are examined, the intuitive becomes obvious. Humans are perfectly capable of being around other naked humans. Nudist children don't have to wonder what the opposite sex looks like under their clothes. There isn't the same kind of intense curiosity at puberty to find all of that out. Instead, nudist children already know, and they can focus on other more important things in their teen years without the risk of stumbling into inappropriate sexual material in their quest to sate their curiosity. Nudists, adults, or children are just human beings, without clothes. Naked means human. So in the end, nudism, naturism, arimism is just humans being human. What do you see in a nudist environment? You see human beings. That's all. If seeing human beings troubles you, then have you considered that you may be the one in need of healing? This has been Naturism 101. This has been Naturism 101. I hope you enjoyed it, found it informative. If you see something that I missed, by all means, post it in the comments and I'll give it a look. But with that, I think you know what time it is. This episode of Mudwalkers is brought to you by Naturehim, Todd, Jacob, Brian, Jordan, Benjamin, Jay Sweets, Alex, Pablo, Edward, John, Skating Aimlessly, Joseph, Charlie, Lionheart, Liam, Harry, Jesse, Max, Adam, Edward T, Nate, and C. Berryman. Thank you so much to all my patrons for supporting me on Patreon. You're making this content possible. You're keeping my work sustainable. I cannot thank you enough for supporting me on Patreon. If you'd like to become a Patreon member, just check out the link in the description. We have a $5 tier and a $10 tier. I'm talking too fast. The $10 tier actually gets an exclusive Zoom hangout with me and my other patrons. It's a great time to share ideas, swap stories, collaborate, communicate, and generally just hang out and be bros. It's a great time. It doesn't have to be bros. We can have some sisters in there as well in the Zoom hangout next time, if there are any. But yeah, it's pretty great. I'm having a blast with Mudwalkers right now. And again, I cannot thank you enough for supporting me here on YouTube with likes, shares, subscribe, etc. You'll find my social media down below. Go give me a follow on those as well. With that, I think that's just about it for this video. I'll see you in the next one. Thank you for watching Out of a conviction that clothing is useful as protective gear, but is otherwise detrimental to human health and well-being. Oh my. For the purposes of this video, I'll include naturism and arimism under the